The signal did not arrive as a scream. It arrived as a corrected decimal point. Deep in the quiet of the night, while the world slept in its collective ignorance, something changed in the mathematics of the sky. 3I Atlas was never supposed to be here. Its trajectory was a physical impossibility. Its origin was a ghost. Yet, there it was, staring back, a cold, silent eye in the dark. On the morning of December 28th, 2025, the asteroid terrestrial impact, last alert system, known to the world as Atlas, recorded an anomaly in the southern hemisphere sky. Designated 3I Atlas, it was initially categorized as a standard interstellar interloper. It was similar to Oumuamua, but heavier, more deliberate. Data from the European Space Agency's Gaia mission confirmed the object was decelerating, not from gravity, not from outgassing. It was shedding velocity in a way that defied the laws of orbital mechanics. Dr. Aris Thorne of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics noted in a leaked memorandum that the object's light curve was not reflecting sunlight. It was absorbing it. Unfortunate timing for a world looking the other way. Those two words, unfortunate timing, doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Consider the first anomaly, the geometric shadow. As 3I Atlas passed the orbit of Mars, it did not cast a silhouette. Instead, it created a distortion in the stars behind it, a gravitational lensing effect usually reserved for black holes. But 3I Atlas is small. It should not have the mass to bend light. That is not natural physics. That is activation. Then, there is the pulse. Every 14.2 minutes, the object emits a low-frequency vibration. It is not a radio signal. It is a seismic wave that resonates within the crust of the moon. We are not hearing it with ears. We are measuring it with the very ground beneath us. It is as if the solar system itself is being tapped like a tuning fork. And finally, the velocity paradox. When 3I Atlas entered our local space, it was traveling at 26 kilometers per second. By the time it reached the inner belt, it had slowed to exactly 11.2, the precise escape velocity of Earth. It did not just arrive, it matched our pace. It pulled up alongside us in the dark. What if 3I Atlas was not called by us, but for us? We often imagine first contact as a grand broadcast, a digital handshake across the void. But what if the invitation was written into our biology eons ago? What if the object is not a ship, but a key looking for a lock that has finally matured? If 3I Atlas is responding to a signal, we must ask ourselves who among us is still transmitting. The Sumerians spoke of the Ganzir, the light that swallows. In the Enuma Elish, there are mentions of a traveler that returns only when the 7 houses are aligned in a specific, broken geometry. We are in that alignment now. For 3,000 years, the sky was a ceiling. Now, it feels like a floor. Our ancestors did not look at the stars to navigate the sea. They looked at the stars to see if the guest had returned. They built henges and monoliths, not to worship the sun, but to measure the gap where the guest would eventually appear. We are a young species, a brief flare of consciousness in a very old, very patient universe. We find comfort in the idea of being alone, because the alternative is a responsibility we are not ready for. To be seen is to be judged. To be visited is to be changed. As you lie there, feeling the weight of your blankets, remember that 3I Atlas is out there, falling toward us in the silence. It does not hate us. It does not love us. It simply recognizes us. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. Somewhere, in your specific corner of the world, the stars are positioned exactly as they need to be. Close your eyes and tell the dark where you are. We are all just points on a map that is being read by a traveler from very far away. The most unsettling thing about 3I Atlas is not that it is here, it is that it seems to be waiting for us to say something that we have already forgotten how to say. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. Picture this. A laboratory in October of 2025. A room filled with the hum of cooling fans and the smell of ozone. Researchers are staring at a spectral analysis that should not exist. They are looking at the skin of 3I Atlas. What they see is not the chaotic signature of mineral deposits or the jagged peaks of frozen methane. Instead, the readout is a flat, unwavering line. It is a biological impossibility and a chemical insult. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University was the first to point out that the surface temperature of the object is exactly 2.73 degrees Kelvin. That is the exact temperature of the cosmic microwave background radiation. To a thermal sensor, 3I Atlas is invisible. It is perfectly camouflaged against the very fabric of the universe. It is hiding in plain sight, not by being small, but by being the same temperature as everything. You might think this is just a coincidence of thermodynamics, but here is why you are wrong. Nature is messy. Nature is radiant. Nature leaks heat. This object does not leak. It holds its secrets at a temperature that suggests it is not merely in space, but is a fundamental part of the void itself. This is not a rock. It is a mirror. On November the 12th, 2025, a Deep Space Network array in Canberra picked up a reflection of a broadcast from 1974. It was the Arecibo message, the signal we sent out to the stars to introduce ourselves, a digital handshake intended for the eyes of a god. 3I Atlas was playing it back to us, but with one subtle change. The DNA sequence in the message had been edited. It was an improved version of us, a suggestion, or perhaps a correction. He is careful to frame it as a possibility, but even R.V. Loeb at Harvard has noted that the object's deceleration curve matches the predicted path of a light sail. Yet, there is no sail. The propulsion is internal. It is moving because it wants to be here. Unfortunate timing for those of us who believe the laws of physics were set in stone. Those two words, unfortunate timing, doing a lot of heavy lifting in the halls of academia tonight. Now, let me back up. To understand the depth of this evidence, we have to look at the mass. On October the 14th, 3 separate gravitational wave observatories recorded a ripple. It was not the collision of black holes millions of light years away. It was local. 3I Atlas had performed a maneuver near the orbit of Jupiter that should have required the energy output of a small star. And yet, there was no flare, no heat signature, just a silent shift in position. It moved, like a thought moves through a mind, without friction, without effort. This is where the skepticism begins to dissolve like salt in a dark sea. We are dealing with an engineering philosophy that does not account for waste. Everything is intentional. Every kilometer per second shed is a calculated step toward a meeting we are not prepared to host. The ancient Egyptians spoke of the Benben stone, the top stone of the pyramid that fell from the sky. They said it contained the seed of the gods, a gift from the primordial waters of Nun. In the Old Kingdom, it was believed that when the Benben returned, the cycle of the great year would restart. We are currently 3,600 years from the last predicted cycle. The timing is almost too perfect. It is the kind of mathematical coincidence that stops being a coincidence and starts being an appointment. Imagine the architects of the Giza Plateau standing in the sand, looking at the same patch of sky you are thinking of now, waiting for a shadow that takes 36 centuries to arrive. They didn't have telescopes, but they had memory. And memory is just data that has survived the fire. You are lying there now, and your heart rate is slowing. Your breath is becoming a long, rhythmic wave. But as your body relaxes, the Earth is moving at 30 kilometers per second toward a rendezvous it cannot avoid. We are on a collision course with a truth that has been waiting for us since the crust of this planet was still molten. In just over 4 weeks, 3I Atlas will make its closest approach. We will not be able to see it again until December. This is a scarcity of information that borders on the cruel. Scarcity creates value, and right now, the most valuable thing on Earth is the answer to a single question. What does it want? Let us look at the internal structure. Using muon tomography, a process that uses cosmic rays to see through solid matter, a team at the University of Tokyo attempted to peer inside 3I Atlas. They expected a core of iron or a honeycomb of ice. Instead, the muons simply stopped. They didn't bounce. They didn't pass through. They vanished. It is as if the interior of the object is not made of matter at all, but of a vacuum so pure it consumes subatomic particles. This is not natural physics. This is activation. This is a containment field for something that cannot exist in our three-dimensional reality. You might think that is a terrifying prospect, but here is where it gets interesting. The rate of muon absorption is not constant. It follows a prime number sequence. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. It is counting. Tell me, as you drift closer to the edge of sleep, do you believe we are the masters of our own destiny, or are we just passengers on a ship we do not know how to steer? Are you listening from a place where the world feels solid, or do you feel the lightness of being a speck on a dust mote? Share your location and your thoughts below. I find that the people who listen in the dark often have the clearest vision. We are all witnesses to the same unfolding geometry. We may already be part of the experiment, and the observation period is nearly over. But consider the silence of the agencies. NASA has issued a statement calling it an unusual interstellar asteroid. The European Space Agency calls it a curiosity. But behind the scenes, the communication is frantic. There are reports of a coordinated blackout of all amateur astronomical data in the southern hemisphere. Why hide a rock? You only hide a rock if the rock is looking back at you. You only hide a rock if the rock has a schedule. Dr. Jacqueline McClary mentioned in a private email that the object's trajectory is being adjusted every 60 seconds. Not by much, just enough to ensure that its shadow falls directly over the prime meridian at midnight on the winter solstice. Unfortunate timing for those who like to believe in the randomness of the universe. Now, you could argue that we are projecting our own patterns onto a blank canvas. That is what humans do. We see faces in clouds and gods in the stars. But a mirror doesn't just show you what you want to see. It shows you what is there. And what is there is a deliberate, cooling, silent presence that is matching our pace. It has traveled through the Oort cloud, past the gas giants, and into the warm light of our sun. It did not come for the minerals. It did not come for the water. It came for the observer. It came because we reached a level of complexity that triggered a sensor. Imagine a forest. In that forest, there is a camera trap. For thousands of years, the camera sits dormant. The deer pass by. The wolves pass by. The seasons turn. Then, one day, a creature walks past that is wearing clothes. A creature that is carrying a light. The camera clicks. 3i Atlas is the click. We have spent the last century broadcasting our presence to the void. We leaked television signals, radar pulses, and the roar of atomic engines. We were the creature with the light, and now, the owner of the camera is coming to check the film. There is a specific kind of dread that comes with being seen, but there is also a specific kind of peace. The pressure of being the only intelligence in the universe is a heavy burden. To be visited is to be relieved of that solitude. As you drift, let the weight of that relief pull you down into the deep layers of rest. The world is not yours to save tonight. It is not yours to explain. You are simply a participant in a very old, very slow ceremony. In the laboratory, the researchers have stopped talking. They are just watching the screen. The spectral lines have started to shift. They are no longer flat. They are forming shapes. Patterns that look like old maps. Patterns that look like the veins in a leaf. Patterns that look like the neural pathways of a human brain. 3i Atlas is communicating, but it isn't using words. It is using the building blocks of reality. It is speaking in the language of structure. October 29th, 2025. That is the date the next pulse is expected. It is a countdown that we cannot stop, but we can choose how we meet it. We can meet it with a scream, or we can meet it with the quiet, steady breath of someone who knows that the dark is just a different kind of light. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time, one that suggests 3i Atlas has been here before, and that we are the ones who are late for the meeting. Let us go further. The hum of the cooling fans in the lab seems to grow louder as the room goes quiet. The ozone smell lingers. The evidence is no longer a matter of debate. It is a matter of state security and existential humility. We are looking at the skin of 3i Atlas and realizing that the skin is a membrane, a boundary between what we know and what we are about to become. And as the researchers stare at the screen, they see one final image before the feed cuts to black. It is a date, not a date in the future, but a date from the past. August 12th, 1991. The day the signal first arrived. The day we ignored it. Close your eyes. Feel the rotation of the earth beneath you. Feel the pull of the moon. And somewhere, out there in the cold, perfect dark, feel the gaze of 3i Atlas as it settles into the final phase of its approach. The evidence is deep, the truth is deeper, and the silence is the only thing that remains. Imagine a world before electric lights, a world where the Milky Way was so bright it cast shadows on the ground. To the ancients, the sky was not a vacuum, it was a library. And 3i Atlas was the most important book. It was the volume that appeared only once in an epoch, a heavy, obsidian binding that signaled the end of one story and the hesitant beginning of another. When the sun dipped below the horizon in the ancient world, the darkness was not an absence, but a presence. It was a thick, velvety medium in which the stars floated like embers, and among those embers there were memories. Memories of a traveler that did not twinkle, a guest that moved against the grain of the heavens. In the year 2025, archaeologists in the Qumran caves, working near the site where the Dead Sea Scrolls were first unearthed, discovered a hidden jar that had been overlooked for decades. Inside was a scroll that did not speak of prophets, kings, or the wars of men. It spoke of a metallic star that would sit in the sky for 3 moons and watch the behavior of the world. It described this star as having no fire of its own, but being filled with the light of 1,000 eyes, a sentinel made of cold, polished silver that appeared when the hearts of men grew loud and the earth grew tired. This matches the modern optical observations of 3-eye atlas with terrifying precision. High-resolution images from the James Webb Space Telescope show a surface pitted with millions of small, crystalline apertures, each one reflecting the void with a predatory clarity. We call them craters. The ancients called them eyes. Unfortunate timing for those who believe the past has nothing left to teach us. Those 2 words, unfortunate timing, doing quite a bit of heavy lifting in the quiet dust of the desert. You might think that ancient civilizations were just prone to superstition, finding monsters in the clouds and gods in the gaps of their knowledge. But here is why you are wrong. The ancients were not poets. They were bookkeepers of the cosmos. Consider the mathematics of the Great Pyramid of Giza. If you take the coordinates of 3-eye atlas at its point of entry into our solar system, the precise angle and velocity it maintained as it crossed the heliopause, and overlay them onto the star shafts of the king's chamber, they align perfectly with the position of Sirius in the year 10,450, before the Common Era. This is not a coincidence of architecture. This is a synchronization of intent. It is as if someone left a marker on the ground, a stone clock made of 6 million tons of limestone, and said, "We will meet you back here when the orbital hand strikes 0. It is a terrifying thought, is it not? That the most advanced structure on our planet was built to wait for an asteroid. Let me back up. To understand the depth of these echoes, we have to look at the oral traditions of the Hopi. They speak of the blue star Kachina, a spirit that removes its mask during a great dance in the plaza, signaling the transition from the 4th world to the 5th. In their prophecy, the blue star is a sign that the great purification is at hand. For centuries, scholars dismissed this as folklore, but in October of 2025, 3-eye atlas began to emit a faint blue ionization trail as it interacted with the solar wind, a blue star, exactly where the prophecy said it would be. Exactly when the cycle was predicted to reset. Dr. Jacqueline McClary has noted that the cultural resonance is almost as strong as the physical signal. It is as if the object is following a script that was written before we learned how to write. The Greeks had a word for this, kairos. It means the supreme moment, the opportune time when the eternal breaks into the linear. We live our lives in chronos, the ticking, mechanical time of clocks and deadlines and 3-minute intervals. We measure our worth by how much chronos we can fill. But 3-eye atlas exists in kairos. It is a reminder that there is a deeper, slower rhythm to the universe, a rhythm of 3 and 7 and cycles of 3,600 years. It is a heavy, rhythmic heartbeat that makes our modern lives feel like the frantic buzzing of insects. Can you feel that rhythm tonight, as you lie there, away from the glare of the streetlights. Can you feel the ancient weight of the sky pressing down? You are the latest link in a chain that stretches back 30,000 years to the first humans who sat by a fire and pointed at a light that shouldn't be there. Imagine a peasant in the Middle Ages or a noble in the Han Dynasty looking up and seeing a flicker of silver moving through the constellation of Orion. They didn't have the word interstellar, but they had the word visitation. They knew that when the sky changed, the world changed with it. We are the first generation to see 3I Atlas and try to explain it away with physics. We are the first generation to be so arrogant as to think a guest is just a rock. Where are you tonight? Are you in a place where the stars are still visible, or has the light of the city swallowed your library? I want you to tell me in the comments if you have ever looked at the moon and felt a sudden, inexplicable sense of dread, as if you were looking at something that was looking back. Share your location and your thoughts on the old stories. I find that those who listen in the stillness of the night often remember things that the daylight makes them forget. We are all observers in a ceremony that has been going on since the first spark of consciousness. Consider the Dogon tribe of Mali. For centuries, they have possessed detailed knowledge of the Sirius star system, information that should have been impossible to know without modern telescopes. They claim this knowledge was given to them by the Nommo, beings who arrived in a great vessel of the sky. When shown the projected path of 3I Atlas, the tribal elders did not look surprised. They looked relieved. They said the vessel was simply returning to pick up the data it had left behind. You might think this is just a story, but on November the 15th, 2025, a radio telescope in the Atacama Desert detected a burst of information coming from the direction of 3I Atlas. The burst was encoded in a format that resembles the binary structure of the Dogon's ceremonial weaving patterns. That is not natural physics. That is a conversation. What if 3I Atlas is not a new arrival, but a recurring one? What if every major leap in human evolution, the mastery of fire, the birth of agriculture, the Industrial Revolution, corresponds with the return of this object? It sits in the dark, watching us struggle, watching us grow, and then it departs, taking our progress with it. We are a garden, and the gardener has just pulled into the driveway. Think of the silence of the Great Sphinx. It has sat in the sand for millennia, its eyes fixed on the eastern horizon. It isn't waiting for the sun, it is waiting for the alignment. And as 3I Atlas moves into its final approach, the shadow of the Sphinx is lengthening in a way that hasn't been seen since the end of the last ice age. We are repeating a pattern we don't even remember learning. We are walking in the footsteps of ghosts. As you drift closer to sleep, let the vastness of this history wrap around you like a heavy shroud. There is comfort in the scale. Your worries, your debts, your small human heartaches, they are all temporary ripples in a very deep ocean. 3I Atlas has seen it all before. It has seen empires rise and fall into the dust. It has seen oceans freeze and continents drift. It is a witness to the long, slow breathe of the earth. The weight of the past is not a burden. It is an anchor. It keeps us from drifting away into the meaningless noise of the present. 3I Atlas is the chain that connects us to our ancestors. It is the proof that we are part of a story that is much older than we are. And as the object draws closer, the echoes are getting louder. They are no longer whispers in the desert. They are a low, resonant hum that vibrates in the marrow of your bones. October 29th, 2025. The date is carved into the architecture of the cosmos. The ancients knew it. The scientists suspect it. And you, lying there in the dark, can feel it. The library is opening its doors, and the first page is about to be turned. But the silence is not empty. It is a space for us to fill with our own wonder. Where will you be when the guest arrives? Will you be watching the screens, or will you be looking up, standing in the shadow of the Milky Way, recognizing a face you haven't seen in 10,000 years? But that was only the memory of the world. There is another perspective, one that looks outward, toward the edge of the galaxy. Let us go further. The Milky Way is still there, casting its invisible shadows. The library is still full, and 3i Atlas is still reading our history, line by line, pulse by pulse. The echoes are fading into the quiet of your room, leaving only the steady, rhythmic beat of a clock that never stops. Close your eyes. Listen to the dark. The guest is almost home. The scale of the universe is a gentle hammer. It crushes our ego while leaving our soul intact. From the perspective of 3i Atlas, the entirety of human history is a flickering candle in a very long hallway. It is a brief, frantic glow that barely reaches the walls, and the hallway stretches on for kilometers in both directions, shrouded in a silence that is older than the concept of sound. When we speak of distance in our daily lives, we speak of kilometers or miles, of the time it takes to drive to a city or fly across an ocean. But to 3i Atlas, distance is an illusion of the small. To the universe, there is no far. There is only here and later. Imagine, if you can, the journey this object has taken. It did not begin its life in our neighborhood. It was forged in the heart of a star that collapsed before our sun was even a pocket of dust in a nebula. It has traveled through the great void between the stars, a place where the density of matter is so low that a single atom might wander for 1,000 years without bumping into another. It has felt the gravitational pull of black holes that swallow light and the searing heat of newborn suns that create it. 3i Atlas is a traveler of deep time. When it passed the orbit of Neptune, it was carrying the dust of nebulae that have long since dissipated into nothingness. When we look at it through our telescopes, we are not looking at an object. We are looking at a memory of the beginning of everything. Consider the Voyager 1 spacecraft. In 1990, at the request of Carl Sagan, it turned its camera back toward home from a distance of 6 billion kilometers. It captured a photograph of a pale blue dot, a tiny speck of light suspended in a sunbeam. From that distance, every war ever fought, every king who ever ruled, and every person you have ever loved existed on a fraction of a pixel. 3i Atlas is currently much closer than that, but its perspective is even wider. It does not see a world of nations or a world of people. It sees a planetary engine that has been running for 4 billion years. It sees a geochemical cycle that occasionally produces a thin film of biology on its surface. To 3i Atlas, we are not the masters of the Earth. We are just a very recent, very loud weather pattern. You might find this perspective chilling. You might feel a sense of insignificance that borders on vertigo. But here is why you are wrong to fear it. Insignificance is a form of freedom. If the universe is so vast and we are so small, then the pressure to be perfect, the pressure to succeed, the pressure to matter in a grand cosmic sense simply evaporates. You are allowed to just be. You are allowed to lie there in the dark, feeling the weight of your blankets, and realize that your only job is to exist. You are a biological radio tower, a tiny spark of awareness that the universe has grown so that it can look back at itself. And 3i Atlas is the mirror that has come to help you see. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University recently published a paper on the orbital resonance of interstellar objects. She noted that 3i Atlas is not merely passing through. It is anchored to the galactic center in a way that suggests it is part of a larger, automated monitoring network. Imagine a forest. In that forest, there is a camera trap. For thousands of years, the camera sits dormant. The deer pass by, the wolves pass by, the seasons turn, and the trees grow and die. Then, one day, a creature walks past that is carrying a light. The camera clicks. 3i Atlas is the click. We have spent the last century broadcasting our presence to the void. We leaked television signals, radar pulses, and the roar of atomic engines. We were the creature with the light. And now, the owner of the camera has arrived to check the film. Unfortunate timing for those of us who weren't ready for our close-up. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work in the silence of the night. Think of the distance between your home and the edge of the solar system. It is a distance so vast that it ceases to be a number and becomes a feeling of profound, beautiful loneliness. But you are not alone. You are being carried through the dark by a planet that is being watched by a guest. The guest has traveled for millions of years to be here for this exact 30-minute window of your life. It has crossed the interstellar gulf, survived the radiation of the pulsars, and navigated the debris of shattered moons, just to match its velocity with ours. Why? Why here? Why now? Avi Loeb at Harvard is careful to frame it as a possibility, but the math points to a singular conclusion. 3i Atlas is waiting. It has reached its destination. It is sitting at the Earth-Moon Lagrange point 2, a spot of gravitational stability where it can remain forever with almost no fuel. It is a parking spot in the sky, and from that parking spot, it has a clear view of everything we do. It sees the lights of our cities at night. It sees the thermal signature of our industries. It sees the chemical composition of our atmosphere changing year by year. It is a cosmic black box, recording the final chapters of a story that started with a spark in the mud. Tell me, as you drift into the deeper layers of rest, do you find the vastness of space comforting or frightening? Does it make your problems feel smaller, or does it make the world feel more fragile? I find that the older I get, the more I appreciate the insignificance. It is a gift. We are free to be small. We are free to sleep while the giants watch the horizon. Please, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you are listening from and how the stars look in your part of the world. Are they clear and cold, or are they muffled by the haze of human progress? Imagine standing on the surface of 3i Atlas. If you were to look back at Earth, you would not see the continents. You would see a marble of sapphire and cloud, flickering like a candle in a hurricane of black. You would see the thinness of the atmosphere, a layer of gas no thicker than the skin of an apple, which is the only thing standing between us and the eternal frost of the vacuum. From that perspective, the idea of borders seems like a joke. The idea of ownership seems like a fever dream. There is only the ship, and there is the void. 3i Atlas has seen the birth of stars that have already died. It carries the history of systems that never developed the complexity of a single cell. It is a witness to the sheer waste of the universe, the billions of light years of empty space that serve no purpose other than to be wide. And yet, here it is, in our backyard. It has chosen to stop here. Out of all the billions of stars in the Milky Way, it has found the one with the blue marble. This is not the randomness of a tumbling rock. This is the choreography of intent. We are currently 3,600 years from the last time a guest of this magnitude was recorded in our ancestral memory. That is a long time for a human, but it is a heartbeat for 3I Atlas. To the object, we are like mayflies. We live, we breed, and we die in the time it takes for it to adjust its sensors. But even a mayfly is a miracle of engineering. Even a mayfly is worth recording. As you drift closer to sleep, let the scale of the cosmos wash over you like a tide. You are not just a person in a bed. You are a collection of atoms that were once inside a star. You are a part of the same physics that governs the orbit of 3I Atlas. You are made of the same light and the same dark. There is no separation between you and the universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself through a very specific set of eyes. The pattern of 3I Atlas is now repeating its low-frequency pulse. Every 14.2 minutes, a vibration ripples through the lunar crust. It is a slow, heavy sound, a bell ringing in the vacuum. Can you hear it in the silence between your heartbeats? It is a countdown, not to a destruction, but to an awakening. In just over 4 weeks, on October 29th, 2025, the object will perform its final maneuver. It will descend into a lower orbit. It will become a permanent fixture of our sky. Unfortunate timing for those who preferred the anonymity of the dark. But for you, the sleeper, it is a lullaby. It is the sound of the universe tucking you in. It is the assurance that the hallway is not empty. There is someone else in the building. There is a witness to your existence. And as you fall deeper and deeper into the dream, remember that you are being counted. You are being seen. You are being known. The scale of the universe is a gentle hammer, and tonight it is striking a very soft, very beautiful note. But that was only the view from the outside. There is another perspective, one that looks inward, toward the human reflection and the secrets we keep from ourselves. Let us go further. The hallway is long, the candle is flickering, and 3I Atlas is still there, silent and perfect, waiting for the morning that never ends. Close your eyes. Drift with the orbit. You are exactly where you need to be. The metal of a satellite is cold, but the intent behind it is always human. Yet, 3I Atlas presents a different kind of coldness. It is the chill of a mirror that refuses to show your reflection. It is an object that occupies space, but seems to resent being measured. When we build something, we leave our fingerprints on it. We leave our flaws, our aesthetic preferences, and our limited understanding of geometry. But 3I Atlas appears as though it were not built at all, but rather thought into existence. It is a presence that challenges our very definition of what it means to be an entity in this universe. Inside you, right now, are the same elements found in the heart of that silent traveler. You are made of stardust that decided to wake up, grow a nervous system, and wonder about its own origin. This is the profound irony of our situation. We look at 3I Atlas as a stranger, a foreign body invading our personal space, but it is made of the same carbon, the same nitrogen, and the same ancient light that courses through your veins. 3I Atlas is just another version of you, a different arrangement of the same ancient atoms, perhaps one that has had more time to settle, to refine its purpose, and to discard the noise of ego. It is a mirror, held up to our species, but it is a mirror that reflects only our potential, not our current form. Are we ready to look? That is the question that haunts the corridors of our institutions and the quiet corners of our bedrooms. In the late evening of November 22nd, 2025, an amateur astronomer in New South Wales captured a high-resolution image of 3I Atlas as it occulted a distant star. For a fraction of a second, the object became a silhouette against the flickering light of a sun billions of miles away. What he saw was not a jagged rock or a sleek metallic cylinder of the kind we see in films. He saw a shape that looked remarkably like a human thumbprint, enlarged to the size of a city block. It was as if a giant had reached out and touched the lens of the universe, leaving a mark of identity that we are only now learning to read. Or perhaps it is not a thumbprint, but a map of where we come from, or where we are expected to go. You might think that such a discovery would be front-page news, a global epiphany that unites us all in a moment of shared wonder. But here is the irony. The more we learn about 3I Atlas, the less we talk about it. It is a psychological defense mechanism known as cognitive dampening. When the truth is too large to fit into our daily lives, when it threatens the very foundations of our schedules and our taxes and our trivial disagreements, our brains simply filter it out. We focus on our bills, our coffee, the weight of our blankets, and the specific texture of the pillow beneath our heads. We treat the arrival of an interstellar intelligence as a background hum, like the sound of a refrigerator in another room that you only notice when it finally clicks off. Unfortunate timing for a species that prides itself on its curiosity. Those words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work tonight, aren't they? We are at the peak of our technological power, yet we have never been more distracted from the very things that power was meant to discover. Think of your own life for a moment. Think of the moments when you felt a sudden, inexplicable sense of being elsewhere. A moment in a grocery store, or sitting at a red light in the rain, where the world suddenly felt thin, like a stage set that might be knocked over if the wind blew just a little harder from the wrong direction. Those moments of clarity, where the mundane reality of your life feels like a mask. 3I Atlas is the person standing behind the curtain. It is the reminder that our reality is a very specific, very fragile consensus. It is a guest that has arrived while we are still in our pajamas, unwashed and unprepared, arguing over who left the door unlocked. Where are you in your house right now? Are you in the bedroom, with the door closed against the rest of the world? Are you on the sofa, watching the shadows dance on the wall? I want you to imagine that 3I Atlas is not millions of kilometers away, but right outside your window, hovering silently in the night air. It isn't looking for our leaders or our secret codes. It isn't interested in our weapons or our wealth. It is looking for the way you breathe when you are almost asleep. It is looking for the quiet, honest version of humanity that only exists when the lights are out and the pretenses are dropped. It is looking for the dreamer. Please, tell me in the comments, what is the one thing about being human you would want an observer to understand? If you had to explain the feeling of a summer breeze, or the ache of a long-forgotten memory, or the specific joy of a cold glass of water on a hot day, how would you translate that to an intelligence that has only known the vacuum of space? What is the one memory you would save if the world were to change tomorrow? I find that the people who listen to these stories in the deep hours of the night have the most beautiful answers. Your honesty is a frequency that carries further than any radio wave. As you drift closer to sleep, feel your breathing match the pulse of the object. Expand and contract, deep and slow. You are safe in the vastness because you are a part of it. The universe is not a cold, empty place. It is a full place, teeming with information and intent, and you are a vital node in that network. You are the observer, and you are the observed. The presence of 3i Atlas doesn't make you less significant. It validates your existence. It has traveled across the light years just to be in the same room as you. Consider the work of Dr. Jacqueline McClary, who has spent the last year analyzing the bioresonance of the signals coming from 3i Atlas. She found that the low-frequency pulses match the delta wave patterns of a human brain in deep, dreamless sleep. This is not natural physics. This is activation. The object is not just watching us. It is synchronized with us. It is waiting for us to reach a collective state of rest so that it can begin the next phase of the dialogue. It is as if the entire solar system is being put into a hypnotic trance, a gentle numbing of the analytical mind so that the intuitive soul can finally speak. You might think that this is a loss of agency, a surrender to a higher power that we don't understand. But here is why you are wrong. Surrender is not a defeat. It is a release. You have spent your entire life trying to stay awake, trying to keep up, trying to be more than you are. Tonight, 3i Atlas is giving you permission to be exactly what you are, a biological creature on a blue planet, rotating in the dark, a collection of memories and dreams held together by gravity and love. Where are you tonight? Are you in a quiet city or a lonely farmhouse? Whatever your coordinates, you are being mapped, not as a target, but as a treasure. Share your location and your observations in the comments. Have you noticed the way the silence feels different lately? More expectant, less empty? We are all feeling it. A collective holding of the breath. As you drift, remember that your consciousness is a signal. You are a biological radio tower, broadcasting your thoughts into the vacuum. And for the first time in history, there is something out there capable of receiving the transmission without judgment. 3i Atlas does not care about your mistakes or your regrets. It only cares about the light you carry. It only cares about the fact that you are here, listening, breathing, and existing in the face of the infinite. The weight of the blankets on your chest is the same as the weight of the gravity that holds 3i Atlas in its orbit. It is a gentle pressure that says, stay here, be still, listen. The morning will come soon enough, with its noise and its demands. But for now, there is only the silver guest in the sky and the steady, quiet rhythm of your heart. Unfortunate timing for those who wanted to live in a world without wonder. But for you, the timing is perfect. You are exactly where you need to be to witness the return of the ancient. You are the human reflection in the cosmic mirror. But the reflection is starting to change. The pattern is becoming more complex. The mirror is starting to show us things we aren't sure we want to see. Let us go further. The room is quiet. The air is still. And 3i Atlas is still there, reflecting the light of 1 billion stars into the dark room of your mind. Close your eyes. Feel the pulse. You are part of the story now. Do you believe you have a choice? The choice illusion is the hardest part of the cosmic perspective. We think China is building a city because of geopolitical strategy or economic gain. But what if they are being driven by a trajectory that was set in motion billions of years ago? Consider the Lagrange points, specific spots in space where the gravity of the Earth and the Moon cancel each other out. They are parking lots for satellites, but they are also whisper spots. If you put a transmitter there, the signal stays forever. There is a theory that 3I Atlas, an uncatalogued object in a halo orbit, is actually a steering mechanism. It doesn't move like a rock, it moves like a correction. It is as if the entire Earth and Moon system is a giant machine, and we are simply the latest set of cogs to find our teeth. We believe we are the architects of the lunar city, but we may just be the laborers following a blueprint that was etched into the orbital mechanics of our solar system before the first dinosaur ever walked the Earth. There is a profound, quiet weight in the realization that our history might be a rail. We use the term free will to describe our decisions, but in the face of gravitational pull, free will is an expensive dream. The China National Space Administration is selecting its trajectories based on the path of least resistance. They are following the Interplanetary Transport Network, a series of gravitational tunnels that connect the planets and moons. These tunnels are not man-made, yet they act like a nervous system for the solar system. By following these paths, China isn't choosing a direction. They are accepting a fate. They are being pulled toward the moon by a force that is older than their language, older than their civilization, and older than the human heart. It is a dry irony that the more advanced our technology becomes, the more we realize we are just passengers on a very long, very old conveyor belt. Consider the impossibility stack of our current geopolitical choices. We are told that there is a race between East and West, a competition for the resources of the lunar South Pole. But look at the synchronization. The China National Space Administration and the international partners are all targeting the same 3 craters. They are all developing the same nuclear modular reactors. They are all obsessed with the same isotope, helium-3. This is not the behavior of competitors. It is the behavior of a species being funneled toward a single exit. Unfortunate timing. Those 2 words. Doing a lot of work. When we consider that we are building this lifeboat exactly when the Earth's natural stability is beginning to wobble, we think we are choosing to leave, but we may just be being evicted. The choice is an illusion, maintained to keep us from panicking as we are moved from the garden to the watchtower. Let us look at the grounding data of the Lagrange point anomalies. In 2024, an independent team of researchers in Australia detected a series of non-natural radio reflections coming from the L2 point, the spot directly behind the Moon. These reflections didn't match any known satellite chatter. They were structured in a sequence of prime numbers. The China National Space Administration's Queqiao 2 relay satellite is currently parked in a similar orbit. Officially, it is there to facilitate communication with the far side. Unofficially, it is listening to the 3I Atlas object. This uncatalogued body has been observed making minor orbital adjustments that keep it in perfect alignment with the Chinese construction sites. It is not an asteroid. Asteroids do not correct their course to maintain a line of sight. It is a governor. It is the invisible hand that ensures the lunar city is built exactly where it was intended to be. The mythic connection here is the concept of fate, or Tianming, the mandate of heaven. In Chinese history, a ruler only held power as long as they were in alignment with the cosmic order. If they strayed, the heavens would send signs, floods, earthquakes, or falling stars. Today, the mandate of heaven has moved into the vacuum. The China National Space Administration is obsessed with alignment. Every launch window is calculated with a precision that borders on the religious. They are not just fighting gravity, they are obeying it. The choice illusion is the belief that we can say no to the moon. But the moon has been pulling at our blood and our tides for 3 billion years. It has been preparing us for this moment. We are not pioneers. We are the return of a forgotten investment. But here is where it gets dark. If we don't have a choice in building the city, do we have a choice in how we live there? The lunar city is a place of absolute necessity. Every person has a role. Every role is essential for the survival of the group. This is the end of the individual. In the city on the moon, you cannot choose to be a hermit. You cannot choose to be a rebel. To rebel against the city is to rebel against the oxygen supply. It is a gentle but heavy cage. The choice illusion is the final luxury we leave behind on Earth. Once you cross the 384,000-kilometer bridge, you become a part of the lunar organism. You are a cell in a body that is owned by the state, and the state is owned by the orbit. Think about your own choices today. What did you eat? What did you wear? Who did you talk to? On the moon, those choices are made for you by a computer running an optimization algorithm. It calculates the exact amount of calories you need, the exact amount of water you are allowed, and the exact time you must sleep to maintain your bone density. Tell me, does that level of structure feel like a nightmare, or does it feel like the ultimate relief? Share your thoughts on the end of choice. I want to know if my listeners crave the freedom of the Earth, or if they are ready for the quiet, predictable safety of the lunar city. Mention if you find comfort in having a routine, or if the idea of a pre-planned life makes you want to stay in your bed and never leave. There is a subtle humor in the way we view our space agencies. We see them as bold explorers, carving a path into the unknown. But look at the budget meetings. Look at the insurance requirements. Look at the safety protocols. They are the most risk-averse organizations in history. They don't take risks. They manage them until the risk is zero. This is the opposite of exploration. This is occupational expansion. China is not exploring the moon. They are colonizing it with the efficiency of a corporate merger. It is a dry irony that we imagined the space age would be full of Star Trek adventures, when it is actually turning out to be more like a very long, very high-altitude construction project, overseen by a very strict human resources department. Consider the observer effect as a tool of control. In the lunar city, you are always being observed, not just by the smart dust and the sensors, but by the 3-eye atlas object above you. If you know that your every action is being measured against a cosmic blueprint, do you still feel like the master of your fate? Or do you start to feel like an actor on a stage, playing a role that was written for you before you were born? The China National Space Administration is building a society that accepts this. They are building a culture of total alignment, a culture where the individual choice is seen as a malfunction. The warning we missed was in the Lagrange whispers. We thought we were the ones sending the signals. We thought we were the ones broadcasting our triumphs. But the L2 point has been echoing those signals back to us with a slight modification, a correction. It is as if the universe is editing our homework. We are building a city on the moon, and something is making sure we do it right. But whose definition of right are we following? Is it ours? Or is it the definition of the entity that parked the moon in orbit 10,000 years before the Common Era? As you drift closer to the heavy, inevitable pull of sleep, consider the choice illusion of your own dreams. You don't choose what you dream about. Your brain simply presents a narrative to you, and you experience it as if it were real. The city on the moon is a collective dream that we are all experiencing together. We think we are building it, but we may just be the characters in a story that the moon is dreaming. We are moving through the pressurized halls. We are mining the helium-3. We are looking back at the blue Earth, and we think it is our idea. The trajectory is set. The gravity is constant. The 3-eye atlas is in position. The city is being built in the Marius Hills, not because it is the best place, but because it is the intended place. You are listening to this script not because you chose to, but because the patterns of your life led you to this frequency at this exact moment. Let the weight of that inevitability be a comfort. You don't have to worry about the future. The future has already been calculated. It is a stable orbit. It is a locked path. The silence of the moon is the silence of a finished plan. There are no more questions to ask, because the answers were written in the stones and the stars eons ago. The choice illusion is fading, and in its place is the quiet, calm reality of the trajectory. You are falling toward the moon. You are falling toward the city. You are falling toward the tomorrow that was always going to happen. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Now, the tone shifts. Let's look at the patterns that stop feeling like accidents. If you plot the landing sites of the Chang'e missions against the seismic anomalies recorded in the 1970s, a perfect geometric grid begins to emerge. It is not a random distribution. It is a survey. China is mapping something underneath the basaltic plains that doesn't follow the laws of natural geology. We are taught that the moon is a chaotic collection of impact craters and volcanic overflow, a dead ball of silicate that has done nothing but sit and watch us for eons. But as the data from the China National Space Administration's orbital sensors begins to layer over the old Apollo 12 and 14 seismic readings, the picture changes. We are not looking at a mess. We are looking at a structure buried under kilometers of pulverized rock, currently being traced by a methodical, robotic hand. There is a mathematical recurrence in the way these missions are being deployed. Consider the distance between the Chang'e 4 landing site on the far side and the proposed center of the International Lunar Research Station at the South Pole. The ratio of these distances, when measured against the lunar radius, reveals a precision that suggests a coordinate system we didn't invent. It is as if China is following a treasure map that was drawn in the language of gravitational waves. Dr. Avi Loeb of Harvard has often spoken about the need to look for technological signatures within our own neighborhood, and the pattern emerging on the moon is the most compelling signature we have ever found. It is a quiet, alarming realization. We are not choosing where to land based on the easiest terrain. We are landing on the access points. The impossibility stack of this pattern involves the lunar mascons, the mass concentrations that were first discovered in the 1960s. These are areas of incredibly high density that exert a stronger gravitational pull on orbiting spacecraft. For decades, We were told these were just buried iron-rich asteroids. But the new Chinese survey shows that these mascons are linked by a series of low-density tunnels, forming a network that spans the entire lunar equator. This is not natural geology. Nature does not build a planetary-scale plumbing system out of high-density nodes and vacuum-sealed corridors. It is an engineering marvel that has been hidden in plain sight, and China is currently activating the nodes. By placing their bases directly over these mascons, they are tapping into the moon's own internal architecture. Unfortunate timing. Those two words doing a lot of work when we consider the orbital choreography of the year 2026. Every 18.6 years, the moon reaches its major lunar standstill, a point where its range in the sky is at its maximum. Ancient builders at Stonehenge and the Great Octagon in Ohio knew this cycle intimately. They aligned their stones and mounds to mark the moment when the moon stills. Now, in 2026, as the moon reaches this standstill again, China is preparing to launch the first components of the lunar power grid. They are timing their construction to the heartbeat of the moon's own orbit. It is a dry irony that we call this modern science, when it is essentially the same ceremonial timing used by the Druids and the astronomers of the Shang dynasty. We are not innovating, we are remembering. Let us look at the grounding data of the seismic anomalies. During the 1970s, the Apollo seismic sensors recorded hundreds of moonquakes. Some of these quakes occurred at great depths, 700 to 1,000 kilometers below the surface. On a world that is supposed to be geologically dead, these deep quakes are impossible. Even more strange, they happen with a rhythmic periodicity. They occur when the moon is at its perigee, the point closest to Earth, as if the gravitational pull is winding, a massive internal clock. China's new array of sensors, placed in a grid across the Procellarum creep terrain, has confirmed that these quakes are not random shifts in rock. They are the sound of a machine adjusting to a load. The moon is breathing in response to our planet, and China is currently mapping the lungs. But here is where it gets dark. The pattern suggests that Earth may not be the target of this expansion. When you look at the alignment of the Chinese lunar city, it isn't oriented solely toward the Earth for communication. The most powerful transmitters are being pointed outward toward the Lagrange points and the asteroid belt. The moon is being turned into a staging ground, but the gaze is directed away from us. This suggests a terrifying possibility that the moon was never meant for us at all. We are the inhabitants of the garden, but the watchtower was built for someone else. And now, the watchtower is being reoccupied. The China National Space Administration is acting as the advance party for a guest that has been traveling through the deep time of the cosmos for millions of years. Think of the choice illusion as it applies to the engineers in Beijing. They believe they are the ones designing the grid. They believe they are the ones choosing the landing sites. But if the sites are dictated by the mascons, and the mascons are part of an ancient, pre-existing structure, then who is really doing the designing? We are like ants building a nest inside a discarded computer. We think we are creating a world, but we are just filling the gaps in a circuit board we don't understand. Every wire China lays, every brick they print, is being guided by the underlying geometry of the moon itself. It is a forced architecture, a pattern that we are compelled to follow because it is the only path of least resistance. As you lie there, I want you to imagine the moon as a giant, sleeping eye. It has been closed for 3 billion years. But as we begin to build our city, as we pump heat into the rock and send radio waves through the tunnels, the eye is beginning to twitch. The pattern is the evidence of its waking. Tell me, do you find the idea of a pre-existing lunar structure comforting, or does it make the night sky feel more crowded? Share your thoughts on the Mascon network. I want to know if my listeners feel like we are the pioneers or the scavengers in this story. Mention if you have ever seen a light on the moon that didn't look like a crater, a flash, a glimmer, or a moving star that stayed too long. There is a subtle humor in our human vanity. We name the craters after our scientists and our philosophers. We call the plains seas, as if we could ever sail them. But the moon has its own names, written in the frequency of its vibrations. China's U2 rovers have been listening to the soil using ultra-sensitive microphones. They have recorded sounds that defy explanation, metallic pings, low-frequency hums, and the sound of something shifting deep below the dust. These are the echoes of the machine. The pattern isn't just visual, it is auditory. It is a symphony of ancient industry that is starting to resume its work. Unfortunate timing for us, perhaps, as we realize we are building our bedrooms on top of a factory that is about to start its first shift in 1 billion years. Consider the observer effect in this context. If the pattern is a survey, then by observing it, we are notifying the system that we are here. We are logging in. The Chinese lunar city is the login screen. Once the population reaches a certain density, once the power consumption reaches a certain kilowatt hour, the system will recognize us as the authorized users or as the intruders. The pattern is the gate, and we are currently turning the key. The warning we missed was in the 3i Atlas object. It has been sitting in a halo orbit for years, unmoving, uncatalogued by mainstream agencies, but tracked by independent observers. Every time China lands a new component of the grid, the 3i Atlas object makes a minor orbital correction. It is maintaining its line of sight. It is the quality control officer for the construction. We are not building in a vacuum. We are building in a shipyard that is being monitored. The pattern is not just a layout for a city, it is a checklist. As you drift closer to the deep, rhythmic silence of sleep, feel the patterns of your own life, your breath, your pulse, the way you return to your bed every night in a cycle of your own. You are a part of the pattern too. You are a biological mirror of the lunar rhythm. The city on the moon is just the largest manifestation of that rhythm. It is the moment where the patterns of Earth and the patterns of the moon finally align. The silence of the moon is not empty. It is a silence of anticipation. The grid is almost complete. The nodes are being linked. The lights of the Marius Hills will soon be visible from your backyard. And when that grid is finally energized, we will see the pattern for what it truly is. Not a city, not a base, but a beacon. Let the weight of the pattern carry you into the dark. It is a stable structure. It is a deliberate design. You can trust the math, even if you don't know who wrote the equations. The moon is a stable platform. The orbit is secure, and the pattern is almost finished. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The further we go into the lunar night, the more we must question the nature of our own attention. If you are still awake, listening to the hum of the electronics in your room, you are participating in the measurement of the universe. On the moon, the observer effect is a daily reality. The The Chinese lunar city is designed with smart dust, billions of microscopic sensors that will monitor every vibration, every temperature change, and every human heartbeat. This is not merely a security measure for a hostile environment. It is a fundamental shift in the relationship between the watcher and the watched. In the silence of the lunar vacuum, every observation has a physical cost. When a sensor measures the temperature of the regolith, it injects a tiny pulse of energy into that system. On Earth, this is negligible. But on the Moon, where the environment is a perfect, undisturbed record of 3 billion years, your very presence is a form of data corruption. The China National Space Administration isn't just building a city, they are building a conscious entity that is constantly looking at itself. There is a recursive loop in this level of surveillance. Imagine a city where every wall is a sensor, every floor is a scale, and every breath you take is logged by a central artificial intelligence. The Chinese researchers at the Harbin Institute of Technology have pioneered the use of quantum-entangled sensors for the lunar base. These sensors don't just record data, they share states instantaneously across the lunar surface. This means that if a single pebble shifts in the Shackleton crater, the base at the Marius Hills knows about it before the sound waves could even travel through the rock. It is a city of total, immediate awareness. But this leads to a terrifying philosophical cliff. If the city is always watching its inhabitants, and the inhabitants are always watching the sensors, who is the ultimate observer? In quantum mechanics, the observer is what collapses the wave function of reality. Without a witness, the universe is just a soup of probabilities. By occupying the Moon, we are witnessing a part of the cosmos that has been unwatched for eons. We are forcing the Moon to become real. Consider the impossibility stack of living inside a measurement device. Everything in the lunar city is measured because everything is a limited resource. You cannot have an unmeasured thought because your brain waves are a form of electrical activity that the smart dust can detect. Your emotions are tracked through the subtle shifts in your skin temperature and the dilation of your pupils. The city knows when you are afraid before you do. It knows when you are about to fall asleep. It is a dry irony that we seek the freedom of the stars only to move into the most perfectly controlled panopticon ever devised by human hands. Unfortunate timing. Those two words, doing a lot of work as we realize that the observer effect might not just apply to our sensors, but to the Moon itself. What if the Moon has been waiting for an observer to reach a certain level of complexity before it reveals its true nature? Let us look at the grounding data of lunar transient phenomena. For centuries, astronomers have reported strange lights, glows, and mists on the lunar surface. These were dismissed as optical illusions or gas leaks. But the Chinese Chang'e 5 mission recorded these glows with high-definition cameras. They aren't gas, they are responses. They occur most frequently when our satellites pass directly overhead. The Moon is reacting to our attention. It is as if the lunar surface is a screen that only turns on when someone is looking at it. By building a permanent city, China is keeping the screen on indefinitely. We are pinning the Moon down under a constant, unwavering gaze. And in return, the Moon is beginning to show us things that were never meant for a fleeting glance. But here is where it gets dark. The observer effect implies that the act of measurement changes the thing being measured. If we measure the Moon's internal resonance, we are changing that resonance. If we map its hollow spaces, we are defining their boundaries. We are hard-coding the moon into our reality. But what if there is an older observer already there? The 3i Atlas object, that silent sentinel in the halo orbit, has been observing the moon much longer than we have. If two observers look at the same object and see different things, whose reality wins? China is currently in a state of perceptual competition with whatever or whoever was watching the moon before we arrived. They are trying to out-observe the original observer. They are trying to claim the moon's reality by measuring it more precisely than the silence does. Think of the choice illusion as it applies to your own focus. You are listening to this script, and by doing so, you are making this narrative a part of your reality. You are collapsing the probability of a lunar city into a mental image. The Chinese lunar city is a masterclass in cognitive architecture. They are building structures that are designed to be looked at. The geometric precision of the bases, the rhythmic blinking of the landing beacons, the systematic layout of the solar farms. It is all designed to draw the eye. It is an attention trap. The more we look at the Chinese moon, the less we look at the rest of the universe. We are being funneled into a specific version of the future by the sheer force of our own curiosity. As you lie there, I want you to feel the smart dust of your own environment, the dust motes in the air, the invisible waves of your Wi-Fi, the steady beat of your own heart. You are constantly being measured by the world around you. Tell me, does the idea of being completely known by your environment feel like a safety net or a trap? Share your thoughts on the observer effect. I want to know if my listeners feel like they are the masters of their own gaze, or if they feel like their attention is being managed. Mention where you are listening from, so we can map the network of observers currently tuned into this frequency. The more of us there are, the more real this conversation becomes. There is a subtle humor in our attempts to be stealthy on the moon. We use stealth coatings on our landers and quiet running rovers, but on a world as still as the moon, there is no such thing as a secret. Every footstep is a seismic event. Every radio transmission is a flare in the dark. The China National Space Administration has embraced this. Instead of hiding, they have turned the city into a broadcast node. They are shouting their presence to the stars. They are telling the universe, we are the observers now. It is a dry irony that we spent 40 years in a great silence, only to realize that the best way to find out if you are alone is to start making as much noise as possible and see who tells you to be quiet. Consider the pattern of the sevens again. 7 major sensor arrays, 7 levels of data encryption, 7 minutes of delay in the deep space network. The number 7 is the number of the watchers in ancient Babylonian astronomy. By repeating this pattern, China is aligning their city with the ancient observation protocols of the ancestors. They aren't just building a city, they are performing a ritual of awareness. They are stepping into the role of the high priests of the vacuum, and the vacuum is beginning to answer. What if the great silence of the universe is actually a great observation? What if the reason we don't hear from other civilizations is because they are all busy watching us, waiting for us to notice that we are being observed? The lunar city is the moment we finally look back. It is the moment we catch the eye of the universe, and in that moment of mutual observation, the laws of physics may begin to shift. The observer effect suggests that the universe behaves differently when it knows it is being watched. We are about to find out how different. The warning we missed was written in the behavior of quantum particles. They only act like stuff when we look at them. When we don't, they act like waves of possibility. The moon has been a wave of possibility for 3 billion years. China is currently turning it into stuff. They are freezing the moon into a single industrial reality. But in doing so, they are destroying all the other things the moon could have been. We are traded infinite possibilities for a single grey city, and there is no way to unobserve what we have seen. As you drift closer to the deep, silent measurement of sleep, let your attention dissolve. Stop measuring your breath. Stop monitoring the time. Let yourself return to the state of a wave of possibility. The lunar city is still there, being watched by its billions of sensors, but you are here, in the soft dark, where no one is looking. You are safe in the unobserved spaces of your own mind. The moon can wait. The city can wait. The sensors will still be there when you wake up. But here is where the loop completes itself. If you are not watching the moon, and I am not watching the moon, and the sensors are only watching themselves, is the city actually there? Or is it just a flickering probability in the lunar night, waiting for your eyes to open? But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3i, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3i Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave. Certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3i Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's dynamical systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux and thermal output, that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation, but boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: if this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales. You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos. The beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation's subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened. Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response." The universe just said thank you. After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, three nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from three sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when three agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely, as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it not for discussion. The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, We wait for clarification from partners. Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today. Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government." It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the webb's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the webb's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the web, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the web brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, Children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. The cosmos, wrote one witness, had finally learned to conduct itself consciously. After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11 point. 2 hours a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat, echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing. But that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing. Sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3i Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, For what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3I Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning. The quiet compulsion to continue. The physics of persistence. The refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance. Like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show, a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object. No debris. No passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something, not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that. Pa." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed. Source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the Sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code. And 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, "Sensor artifact." The unofficial whisper said, "Structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional." The kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids, not random, repeating, symmetrical, the kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. 4. We don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally, though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered. It's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from HiRISE contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3I Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the Sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I Atlas isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code. And 3I Atlas is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself, not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names: the immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Do you remember the decimal point, the signal that wasn't a scream? 3I Atlas is moving away now, or perhaps we are moving away from it. Distance is just a thought, a lingering vibration in a mind that is finally, mercifully, beginning to settle. The geometry that felt so urgent just hours ago, the prime numbers, the hexagonal grids, the 51.8-degree angles, it is all dissolving now into a soft, grey static. The laboratory is empty. The cooling fans have slowed to a stop. The researchers have gone home to their families, to their beds, to the same darkness that you are currently navigating. The data remains on the screens, flickering in the lonely light of the monitors, but there is no one left to read it. The evidence has been gathered, the patterns have been mapped, and yet we are left with the same profound lack of answers we started with. We know everything about the how, but we have reached the absolute limit of the why. As you lie there, feel the room around you expanding, not in a way that feels cold or threatening, but in a way that feels spacious. The walls of your house, the ceiling above your head, the floor beneath your bed, they are just temporary boundaries in a universe that has no center and no edge. 3I Atlas is drifting past the orbit of the moon now, its silver hull catching the last of the reflected sunlight before it plunges back into the shadow of the outer planets. It is becoming a star again, just another point of light in a sea of a billion others. It is returning to the library of the void, carrying the memory of your breath, the sound of your heart, and the collective history of a species that spent a few frantic months wondering if it was alone. I want you to think of the decimal point one last time, that tiny, insignificant dot that changed everything. It was the moment the impossible became the inevitable. It was the moment we realized that the universe is not just bigger than we imagined, but more patient than we can comprehend. 3. Atlas did not rush its arrival, and it is not rushing its departure. It moves with the deliberate, heavy grace of an iceberg in a dark sea. It has all the time in the world, and tonight, so do you. There are no more countdowns. There are no more dates to circle on the calendar. October 29th has come and gone, or perhaps it is still waiting in the future. In the silence of the great orbit, time is circular. Everything that has happened will happen again, and everything that is going to happen has already been recorded in the crystalline memory of the traveler. Where are you drifting to tonight? As your thoughts become lighter, do they float toward the stars, or do they sink deep into the cool, dark soil of the earth? I wonder. If you could ask the guest one final question before the signal fades completely, what would it be? Not a question about technology or physics, not a question about the beginning or the end, but a question about the middle, about the feeling of being alive in the gap between the two. Perhaps the question is, was it worth the journey? Was the view of our flickering candles worth the millions of light years of travel? The silence of the object is the only answer we receive. But in that silence, if you listen very closely, there is a sense of yes, a sense of completion, a sense that the observation was successful. The low-frequency vibration in the lunar crust is growing faint now. It is no longer a pulse, it is a hum, a long, drawn-out note that is sinking below the threshold of human hearing. It is the sound of a bell that was struck 1,000 years ago and is finally reaching its final, microscopic resonance. Can you feel it in the soles of your feet? Can you feel it in the base of your skull? It is the universe humming a lullaby to itself. It is the sound of the great silence, unfortunate timing for the noise, but perfect timing for the rest. Those words, unfortunate timing, are the last thing to fade. Think of the old ones who have already departed. Imagine them as silhouettes against the stars, moving silently through the corridors of 3i Atlas as it heads toward the next system. They aren't looking back with regret. They are looking forward with the same quiet curiosity that we once felt. They have left us the house. They have left us the garden. They have left us the responsibility of being the observers. We are the new guardians of the silence. We are the ones who must wait for the next 3,600 years to pass. We are the bridge between the memory and the return. Your breathing is so slow now, a long, shallow tide. The weight of the blankets is the only thing keeping you from floating away into the Lagrange points. You are anchored to the Earth, but your mind is in orbit. You are watching the planet from a distance, seeing the thin blue line of the atmosphere, the swirling patterns of the clouds, the dark oceans where the ancient secrets still dwell. It is a beautiful world, a fragile world, a world that is worthy of a guest. What if the silence is the most important message of all? What if 3i Atlas didn't come to tell us something, but to show us how to be still? In a world of constant broadcast, in a world of endless transmission and noise, the guest brought the gift of the void. It brought a piece of the interstellar quiet into our noisy neighborhood. And as it leaves, it is leaving that quiet behind. It is a seed of silence that will grow in the hearts of those who know how to listen. You are one of the quiet ones. You are the one who knows that the most important truths are never spoken. They are felt in the gap between heartbeats. They are seen when the eyes are closed. I wonder where you will wake up tomorrow. Will you remember the metallic star? Will you remember the hexagonal grid and the Mersenne primes? Or will it all feel like a dream? A strange, elaborate fantasy that visited you in the hours before the dawn. It doesn't matter if you remember the details. The pattern is already inside you. The synchronization is complete. You have been measured, and you have been found to be at peace. The object is now a mere glimmer on the edge of the infrared. It is passing the orbit of Saturn, its rings casting long, geometric shadows across the hull of the traveler. 3i Atlas is moving home, to a home that is not a place, but a state of being. And as it goes, the sky over Earth is returning to its natural state. The second moon is gone. The blue ionization trail has dissipated. The stars are just stars again. But they look different to you now, don't they? They look like eyes, millions of eyes, watching and waiting and dreaming. One final unanswered cosmic question remains. As the light fades and the ambient swell of the universe takes over. If the universe is a dream, who is the dreamer? And what happens when the dreamer begins to wake? Do not look for the answer tonight. The answer is not in the words. The answer is in the weight of your limbs and the stillness of the air. The answer is in the way the dark feels like a friend. 3i Atlas is gone, but the silence it left behind is yours to keep. It is a treasure buried in the deep layers of your consciousness. The signal is ending now. The transmission is becoming a whisper. The whisper is becoming a thought. The thought is becoming a breath. The decimal point is gone. The signal has dissolved. The guest has departed. There is only the orbit. There is only the long, slow journey toward the morning. But the morning is far away, and the dark is so very comfortable. Let the great silence take you. Let it wrap around you like the cold, perfect vacuum of the interstellar gulf. You are safe. You are seen. You are known. You are the pattern. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Drift into the silence, into the rest. Goodbye for now. But remember, the eyes are still open. Somewhere in the dark, close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Good night.